One of the most fundamental skills in logic is being able to identify the main operator of a well-formed formula. In this video, we'll talk about how you can identify that main operator using the formation rules or constructing the well-formed formula. So here's the basic idea. If you want to be able to identify the main operator of a well-formed formula, all you need to do is build it up using the formation rules of logic, or the grammatical rules, or the rules that allow you to take the symbols and create the formula. The main operator will be the operator that you introduce at the end. That is, when you apply the last formation rule to create the formula itself, that operator that you introduce will be the main operator. Let's take a look at some examples. So we'll start with the simplest possible example. Let's say we have a formula and the formula is not P. So we want to know what the main operator is. For many people, this is going to be comically simple, but just bear with me for a second. Let's construct this formula. Well, if we were going to construct the formula, we would say, well, P is a well-formed formula, and we would cite the formation rule R1 or rule 1, which says every propositional letter is a well-formed formula. The next step would be to say, well, if P is a well-formed formula, then not P is a well-formed formula. And the rule that would justify this is R2, which says you can take any formula and negate it. Technically, we should put parentheses around this particular proposition, but in this case, the parentheses don't really matter. So now we've built the formula, we've built this formula not P, and so we can ask ourselves, when we applied the last formation rule, what was the operator that we introduced? If you take a look here, the operator that we introduced was this negation. And so this negation is the main operator of the formula. It is the operator that has the greatest or most scope. In other words, it's the operator whose scope is the entire formula. Let's look at some more complicated examples. In our next example, we'll look at the following formula. It's P and Q or R. And so here we have a sort of non-trivial decision in the sense that there are two operators and we have to decide which one of these is the main operator, which is the operator with the most amount of scope. Again, one way you can determine this is to simply build the formula, and the operator that you introduce at the end of its construction will be the main operator. So let's build this formula. We would start by saying, well, all these propositional letters, P, Q, and R, are well-formed formulas. There's a formation rule that says that. So P, Q, and R are well-formed formulas. Then what we would say is, well, since P is a well-formed formula and Q is a well-formed formula, then their conjunction is a well-formed formula. So the second step would to say, since P is a well-formed formula and Q is a well-formed formula, since both of these are woofs, it would follow using, I think it's rule 3, that P and Q, the conjunction with parentheses around it, is a well-formed formula. So our last step is to add on this R here. And so what we would do is say, well, we've established from line 2 that P and Q is a well-formed formula. And we also know from line 1 that R is a well-formed formula. So both of those are woofs. Well, there's a rule that says you can take these two well-formed formulas and put them together by placing a disjunction between them. So we would say that P and Q, that's the first formula, and then also R, we can put the disjunction between them, parentheses around the whole thing, is a well-formed formula. And so we have constructed the well-formed formula. Now our goal here isn't to build formulas. Again, it's to identify the main operator. And as we said, the main operator of this particular formula will be the operator that's introduced in the last stage of construction. So what's the operator that we introduced in the last stage of construction? Well, it is this V here, or the sign for disjunction. So the main operator in this formula here is that V, or sign for disjunction. Now let's take a look at another example. In this case, we'll take a look at the following formula. which is not parentheses, parentheses, P or Q, close parentheses, close parentheses. Now, I would say pause the video here, give it your best attempt by constructing the formula first, and then identifying what the main operator is. Okay, so hopefully you have paused the video, but again, our process of determining the main operator here by constructing the formula is the same. We would start by looking at the propositional letters that are found in this formula. So we'd have P and Q. Both of these are well-formed formulas. The second step would be to construct this disjunction. Since we know that P and Q are both well-formed formulas, it would follow that P or Q is a well-formed formula here. And then the last step would be to say, well, since we know that P or Q is a well-formed formula, we establish this at line 2. So we could write, well, P or Q is a well-formed formula. Another formation rule says you can take any formula and then put a negation in front of that formula. So it would follow that not, we need to put parentheses around the whole thing, P or Q is also a well-formed formula. So again, we can ask ourselves, what is the main operator of this particular formula? Well, it is the operator that we introduced in the final formation rule. Well, the operator we introduced was this negation. And so the main operator of this particular formula here is that negation on the leftmost side. Let's look at one more example. And so the example we'll take a look at here is not P or not Q. So here would be the formula if we constructed it using the formation rules, but I'm going to simplify it a little bit because all of those parentheses are a little bit difficult to look at. So we could simplify this as not P or not Q. So again, we have a couple different options. There's two different negations. There's a sign for disjunction, and we might be asked, what is the main operator of this formula? What is the operator that characterizes the formula or has the most scope or has as its scope all of the formula? And so to determine this, we can just build the formula. So we would start again by saying, well, P and Q are well-formed formulas because all propositional letters are well-formed formulas. We got this P and this Q. And then the next step would be to create not Q as well as not P. So if P is a well-formed formula, then it would follow that not P is a well-formed formula. If Q is a well-formed formula, this Q we've already established from line 1, then not Q is a well-formed formula. And so now we've established that not P is a well-formed formula, not Q is a well-formed formula, and we can take those two formulas and put them together, placing this sign for disjunction between them. So since we have not P is a well-formed formula and not Q is a well-formed formula, then it would follow using the formation rule that allows you to create disjunctions that not P or not Q is a well-formed formula. So we've built the formula, and now we have a way of identifying the main operator in this formula here. It is the operator that we introduced at the end. This would be the sign for disjunction, or that V. And so the main operator of this formula here is that sign for disjunction. Now, for all practical purposes, you are not likely to construct the formula every time you want to identify the main operator. Eventually, you'll become comfortable with identifying the operator or seeing how the formula would be constructed and not have to walk through it step by step. But I think learning about this connection between the main operator and the construction of the formula is both helpful at the beginning for learning to identify the main operator, and then also it will be important in other aspects of your learning of logic.